what is driving all this demand?
Well, it's unquestionable that this is a unique moment for Palantir here. We have the tailwinds in the commercial business, the rate of adoption of AI, the normative view that enterprise automation is where the value is, and the tool chain. You could say, it's a 10-year overnight success. The foundational investments that we've made in ontology are the prerequisites that you need to put these workflows into production quickly, to get from a charismatic prototype to actual business value. I would say one of our customers, a very large US insurance company, we've automated all of insurance underwriting. A process that used to take 2 weeks can now be done in 3 hours with a 78 agent AI model. And you can think about that as not just the time saved, which is the first order benefit, but the second order benefit is if all of your competitors take 2 weeks to price risk and you take 3 hours, it's going to be a fundamental dislocation of the market.
I was just going to ask, because IBM is going after enterprise, and Google and Microsoft, they're all going after these enterprise systems for changing how corporations operate and getting them more productive and efficient. So what do you do that they can't?
Well, I think what the market realizes is nobody wants to be on the self-driving car journey. We had a prototype self-driving car in 2005. It drove 120 miles through the desert. 20 years later, we have commercial service in 3 cities. That's not a rewarding journey. So all the value is going to accrete to the companies who have built the tool chain that allows you to get to production quickly. And we've spent the better part of a decade building exactly that.
Although the self-driving thing has a lot of friction from regulation and making sure it's safe, right?
And so will, insurance is a very regulated industry. Hospitals are very regulated. We manage 21% of hospital beds in the US. I think, if you want to solve the whole problem, you have to be able to solve the whole problem and provide the regulators the transparency, the assurance, the telemetry and observability they need to say, yes, this model can be in production. This workflow can be AI enabled.
Do you think geopolitics and global friction is the Palantir story? To what degree is that part of the mix right now, would you say?
Well, I think it's certainly part of the mix overall, where you have this, you have cultural differences. I'd say Europe is looking kind of like deer in headlights. They're trying to think their way through the AI problem. And if there's anything about AI, it is fundamentally experiential. You cannot think your way through it. If you're paying consultants to help you to think about how to deploy it, you're just lighting money on fire. You have got to roll up your sleeves and get busy implementing it. And that is a unique strength of the American commercial markets. You see American companies reacting in exactly that way. And it's a big part of why I think America is outpacing the rest of the world in terms of adoption and the value it's creating from AI.
Well, and is it more affordable? Because a few years ago, it was thought to be high price point for governments and for companies, and that's limited adoption.
Well, it's more effective. You kind of get what you pay for, and certainly people view us as a premium product, but when you get results in weeks instead of years, it's clearly worth it.
What about what Carl mentioned on the military side of things and that business and the growth rate right now, given the geopolitical backdrop is going from bad to worse?
Absolutely. You can look at the current events in the Middle East, but I think if you zoom out a little bit, we are, as America, in an undeclared state of emergency. We have, a year ago, we had a pogrom in Israel where 1,200 people were slaughtered. We've had over 100 attacks on U.S. bases from Iran. We have unprecedented phase 0 and gray zone operations in the South China Sea from the CCP. And we have 1 million casualties in Ukraine. And these are not disconnected events. There is an axis of authoritarians who have lined up to counter Western and American interests here, and we have to rise to that occasion. A big part of that is not just the work we do with the military, AI enabling the kill chain to drive deterrence, to scare the bejesus out of our enemies, but also to reindustrialize America. If we're really going to deter World War III, we have to be able to make things. A lot of the lessons from Ukraine, we spent 10 years of munitions, 10 years of production of munitions in 10 weeks. That is a clarion call to refire up the arsenal of democracy so that we can actually deter great power conflict that might be coming.
How do you decide which governments to work with and which ones to not serve?
Well, we have complete moral clarity on this. We work with the U.S. and her allies.
How are you helping to defend Israel from the war on multiple fronts now against them?
Yeah, well, we've been working with the U.S., allied countries, and Israel directly to enable operations in all theaters of conflict there, to detect ballistic missile launches, to counter them, to coordinate across allies, to share information and intelligence, really to bring the breadth of the West to bear against these problems.
How does America stay competitive in this world on the battlefield, which is getting more dangerous?
Yeah, you really have to think about it as from the factory to the foxhole. Great power conflict is a war of the factories, and we can't forget that. At the dawn of World War II, America was the best at mass production. We had figured that out. Today, our adversary is the best at mass production. And so that's why we have to mobilize.
Mass production of
equipment, of material, right? Like even Stalin, a committed communist, was in awe of what the free market was able to produce. We armed the Soviets to defeat the Nazis here. When we think about reindustrialization today, we have to realize that we have to compete asymmetrically. Our cost advantage will not come from labor. It's going to come from what America is uniquely good at, which is software. David's slingshot, in this case, against Goliath, will be a software-defined slingshot.
Does China have a Palantir?
They don't. I think that's one of the unique...
Do they have something comparable?
My view is no. I mean, look, when you go to third-party countries that are kind of straddling this geopolitical divide, you will find a competitor to Lockheed, a competitor to a defense company. But we don't have Russian or Chinese competitors to Palantir out there trying to sell their software.
Isn't that good for us?
That's great for us.
Yeah.
That's great as a nation. I think while I think that speaks highly of Palantir, more broadly, I think it speaks highly to America's unique software advantage. We are the best as a nation at software by a yawning margin. So good, we tend to underestimate it.
Are you doing much on election interference?
Well, through the work that we do with U.S. intelligence agencies in Europe, yes, we're ensuring the safety of elections, really trying to understand where the sources of misinformation come from, where are nation-state actors trying to interfere. It's the general course of business for these organizations.
Senator Kelly this week said he thought that maybe up to a third of content, political content, that Americans are seeing is either coming from the Chinese, the Russians, or the Iranians.
Well, I think Senator Kelly would know best, given where he sits there. But I think we should all be worried about the sources of information we're getting and the credibility behind it.
What's next in the AI puzzle that you're trying to figure out as the technology evolves?
It's really about scaling it and going after more and more complicated use cases here. So, I think in a year or two, we're going to look back at the 78 agent model and think, wow, that's pretty trivial compared to what we can do now. Today, when I go to Silicon Valley and talk to people about the current work we're doing, they're kind of in awe of the complexity we can handle. But I think scaling this, making it more repeatable, broadening the appeal of it, I think, is where all the value really rests. It is that journey from prototype to production. I mean, one of the contradictions of the LLM revolution is it is so easy to build a charismatic prototype. It is so hard to get from a brittle prototype to something that is valuable, rock steady in production, and that's where we've carved out our competitive differentiation.
Well, you got a lot of fans on Wall Street. Stock's been a rocket show. I know you're burning all those short sellers who Alex hates so much.
That's right.
Thank you, Shyam. Appreciate the time here at Post 9. Shyam Sankar, the CTO.